Hi, I'm Rob Vanstone, and welcome to a bonus edition of the Rider Rumblings video podcast. We were going to wait till next week and do number 61, but then the Rough Riders...
62 would be next week.
61 was next week. Was that McQuarters?
That was last week.
I thought I was teeing up 61 when we did number 60.
No, we're up to 62.
Well, then we salute next week Vic Stevenson, number 62.
My birthday. How about my age?
Oh.
62.
Geez, I thought we had a lot more podcasts to go before we hit your age. Yeah. Sorry about that. We weren't planning this one, and then on Wednesday morning, the Rough Riders announced that they traded Zach Collaros to the Toronto Argonauts for a conditional fourth-round pick in the 2020 CFL draft. That changed everything, at least as far as the immediate discussion. This is Murray McCormick, by the way, our outstanding football writer, and read his Cody Fajardo profile in Thursday's paper. It's outstanding, as is Murray. Enough love for Murray. What are your initial thoughts right off the top about regarding the Zach Collaros
How about
deal?
the initial question I had for myself? Are the Riders a better team now than they were before trading Zach Collaros? And I think they are, because we don't even get a chance to answer that one. They've removed themselves from the headache of what do they do, what if, and what happens.
That whole discussion's gone.
And regardless of how, and it's not to disparage Zach or any point in this, but the uncertainty about that was hanging over this team since the day he was hit in the head. And I think they've cleared up that thing. It's Cody Fajardo's team, even though Craig Dickinson mentioned during his scrum that there's no one guy on this team. There's 24 starters, there's 40 and all that stuff. But it's Cody Fajardo's team as the offensive star of the quarterback position, and let him go and let him run with it. I'm disappointed that it ended this way for Zach. I really think, and I think I think he came into shape in this season, mentally, physically, and ready to do everything he could to lead this team. And because of one of the dirtiest hits we've still seen in football, he's out, and he's going to, Toronto.
Good luck with that.
So there's a whole bunch of thoughts, but
Isaac Harker, I think, changed things too, because the Rough Riders have a degree of comfort in having Isaac Harker as number 2. So I think the whole argument, had it existed, of do the Riders keep Zach Collaros around as a backup, it ceases to be relevant, given the fact that Isaac Harker is younger and less expensive and probably has more of an upside at this stage. I'm surprised, and I don't know the extent of the nobody's given us any details yet as far as the medical situation.
Fine.
But I'm surprised that after having been concussed as often as he has, and we don't know the number and we don't know the severity, but what we can say beyond any dispute is that this has happened repeatedly. I'm surprised that he would want to proceed as a player, and I'm surprised that the Toronto Argonauts would want him to proceed as a player, given the risks that he is now incurring by continuing to play. And football is a dangerous game. It's a physical game. It's a risky game by nature. But given everything that's happened previously, why would you move on from this point? That aspect of it really surprised me.
Tells you how desperate the Argos are. They're going to take a guy with the known concussions issues, who passed his baseline test. He's cleared to play, and we've been there before. He was cleared to play in the West semifinal, and he didn't play anyway. So he's cleared to play. The Argos are in that bad a position that they have to take a chance on a guy that's been off concussed this year, and then deal with all the other issues that are going to come back now. What happens? Because he's going to get hurt again. We know that.
I hope we're wrong.
I
would love to be as wrong and to swing and miss on this as much as anything. I hope he plays for another decade, and I hope he wins repeated Grey Cups, and I hope he has a nice life, and I hope he lives into his 90s or his 100s. I mean, honestly. But when you look at the percentages, when you look at the entire story, what are the chances? And if you're the Argonauts, and so the best case scenario is that he has this utopian conclusion to his career that was part A. Part B, in the worst case scenario, is that there's another concussion. There's once again the awful sight of Zach Collaros laying on the turf. And do you want to see that again? And if you're a coach or a GM, do you want that on your conscience? And Jeremy O'Day and Craig Dickinson no longer have to make that decision. I don't think it would have been a decision for them anyway.
And I think he may not even be on the turf. It could be something just as easy as getting his head brushed against. That's unfortunate how easy the next one can happen to him, and it's too bad about that. And I asked Craig, what do you think Zach's legacy is after 1 year and 16 games? I think it was 16 games.
Yeah, he 10-4 as a starter last year, and then 3 plays this year.
So do we say his legacy is bad luck, or do you say bad fortune, or just
I think it's
bad
mixed
timing?
If you look at it, they were 10-4 in the games that he started. I don't think it was a 10-4. They received 10-4 caliber quarterbacking, perhaps 4-10 caliber quarterbacking, but they won by and large when he was in there. But bad luck, bad timing, what have you. He gets, if you trace it right back to that exhibition game here against Calgary in 2018, he's playing in the third quarter where your starter should not be playing, and he takes a hit that knocks him out of the game and has repercussions that resurface or at least persist until the second game of the season against Ottawa, when there really wasn't any notable hit that knocked him out of the game. He just wasn't feeling great. And that was traced back to that preseason game against Calgary when he shouldn't have been in there in the third quarter. And that's something he himself has even said. So how do things change if they just follow a logical pattern and play their starter in the first quarter or the first half and then put Brandon Bridges? But because they had that silly fake quarterback competition, Zach Collaros is playing in the third quarter of a home preseason game, and that's where he got hit, and that's where it started. He ended up starting 11 consecutive games after coming back from his first stint on the 6-game injured list. But after that, there was the Odell Willis hit against BC. And then there was that whole drama leading up to the Winnipeg game, and then the opener against Hamilton.
And then Calgary, he lied about that injury too. That was another point.
Or just didn't tell anybody.
But he should have. So he kind of showed that. And that's,
I'm not going to
10 years back. That's a
malign him for that.
But 10 years back, that's a competitor. Now it's being just foolish with your life. I think it's a whole different perception of what concussions can do and having your bell rung and stuff. There's way more connotations of it's bad for you, and we know this bad.
He's probably the 5,000th football player, as a conservative estimate, not to tell the coaches or training staff that he's having issues of that nature. It's a pretty precarious position.
I know you're the historian in this room.
Even though you're older, by your own acknowledgement.
Trying to think of a guy, a guy like Cody Fajardo getting this opportunity in the past through injuries. Maybe you can run through a few of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, the one that comes to mind.
Not Rocky Butler, but this is sustained success.
You look at an injury that has led to someone ending up being the starter. You'd go back to 2008. Marcus Crandall gets hurt in week 2. Stephen Giles comes in the second quarter of the game in BC, doesn't do much. So in the third quarter, Ken Miller puts in a young quarterback named Darian Durant who sees the opportunity. Yep. So that's the best case scenario.
But then Michael Bishop came along.
But when, that turned out to be a mess in 2008. But it wasn't a situation where Marcus Crandall gets hurt and there was that body of work behind Darian Durant where they could say, okay, we're going from Marcus Crandall to Darian Durant. Boom. Yeah. We've got this quarterback. Even when Ken Austin showed signs that he was going to be the guy, there was still that Austin Burgess thing. Cody Fajardo, I can't think of a lot of parallels of any in Rider history of somebody who's just taken advantage of a situation when being next man up as a quarterback and seizing it. In 1963, Ron Lancaster was part of a 5-headed quarterback situation, and he had a 109-yard comeback drive for comeback victory against Edmonton in 63. And even that wasn't enough to solidify him as a starter. They ended up starting Frank Tripucka subsequent to that.
Go back to 2009. Remember Durant and Giles were having a training camp battle to determine who was going to be the starting quararterback?
And there was that game in Calgary where they put Giles in the second quarter.
So, it's in precedent. But just imagine, we were wondering back in the day where the Riders would be with Cody Fajardo. Who's this guy? Who's the guy who's a primary backup quarterback, very little film, and going, whew. If Zach gets hurt, what are they going to do?
And we talked about this and wasted so many words on editions 50, 51, 52, 53. Our Kevin Glenn lobby didn't exactly prove to be
here comes Cody,
most prescient.
And I'm watching him at the podium, and I'm thinking he's so poised. He's handling it. He's not nervous. It's not something he's not ready for. It's not something he hasn't visualized in his mind. It's something, and he's very, very religious, and it's not something he probably hasn't prayed over to have this opportunity. And I'm watching him going, man, this guy's ready to go. Like he's
seems like he's right out of central casting.
He's a big. I think he's 6'2" and 2'3", 230. I don't know how.
He's a bigger guy,
and he's going to be going against. There is football to be played. It's not all Zach Collaros. Mind you, it could be. We could keep.
We wouldn't be doing this podcast today if it weren't for the Collaros trade.
But the Tiger Cats have a good defense. They're banged up offensively. I think Brandon Branks is gone, and there's another guy. Simone Lawrence is out of there too, and Jeremiah Mazzoli. So, but defensively they're still pretty good. Delvin Burrow's still back there, and I think
look what they did to Winnipeg last.
And Larry Dean's the middle linebacker. I think
he's in Edmonton now.
Okay, I'm kind of Sorry.
But that's a good football
That's
team.
a good football team.
Very good football team.
A good defensive football team. The questions words still out on offensively with Dean Evans at quarterback, but I still think Brandon Banks are pretty good. But Luke Tasker can play football.
But now we'll see. I mean, it's interesting because they've traded Zach Collaros, and they're obviously all in with Cody Fajardo. I don't think that's a surprise. But this is the first really, really big test of Cody. Well, not the first. The Calgary game was a really big test of Cody Fajardo, and the Riders and Cody Fajardo did not fare well that day. So here's the next big test of Cody Fajardo and the Rough Riders. It's against Hamilton. They trade Zach Collaros. What happens if now the Riders have got to deliver and play up to expectations?
Maybe we can call it
Hamilton.
Let's call it a midterm exam. How's that?
Well,
doesn't end the season if things go well.
It's a Queen City X, so we can at least refer to a midway.
A midway too, and and it's like a mini donut he'd be out there if he doesn't do well.
It's irrespective of how well Cody Fajardo played or didn't play, they still had to do this. Yeah. If it's not a trade, shut him down. Don't play him again here. Yeah. I don't. And Craig Dickinson said that initially when talking about the Zach Collaros situation when the Riders were coming out of the bye week, and said that were they coming out of a bye week? A recent media availability. He talked about how Cody Fajardo is playing does not influence this situation at all.
Yeah.
It's a bonus. The fact that he came in a situation like this and did well, and I'm still trying to think of examples in Rider history that are a parallel. In 83, the Riders traded John Huffnagel to Winnipeg after having cut Joe 747 Adams earlier in the year, and it became Homer Jordan's job. And Homer Jordan had won a national championship with Clemson in 1981, and they thought Homer Jordan was the heir apparent. So that was a situation where, okay, we're trading John Huffnagel, the veteran. John Huffnagel was then 32 years old. In comes Homer Jordan. He did reasonably well at the end of 83, played a bit in 84, won a game in Edmonton in 85, but he didn't prove to be the answer. In 1979, Tom Clements was a Rider quarterback, and it looked a lot like Mike Riley in BC, where there just wasn't any protection. The Riders were just awful that year. They traded Tom Clements to Hamilton. In came Larry Dick, who had been signed the year before. He'd been touted as the heir apparent, and he suffered a career-ending knee injury in the first half against Winnipeg, the first game after the Tom Clements trade. So there aren't many examples of a quarterback being okay in a situation where you've traded the veteran. Here's the next guy up, and he goes on and lives happily ever after. Cody Fajardo played so exceptionally in such a tough situation that he made this an absolute no-brainer. But it probably was anyway when you just look at Zach Collaros' health situation and his background. This had to be done.
And his production here too. I know we said we touched on that. One of the things I found interesting was that Cody and Zach were really close, and they shared their locker. They're right beside each other in the locker room, and he credited Zach with helping out him a lot. He talked about how Zach would watch film and practice and leave him some notes to study when he came back in his locker room. So he's lost that mentor. And I'm not saying Steve Walsh, the quarterback's coach, can't be the same mentor, but there's not that guy that Zach or Cody really, really respected. So you lose that aspect, and we're going to find out maybe how much Zach was in Cody's ear to get this position where, because even when he wasn't here, I'm assuming he was still working with him and stuff, because there's competition for the position, but there's also the team first, and that's the Riders' motto is team before self. So I was quite not surprised, but to hear the praises he had for Zach,
but he's said that consistently.
I know, but there's not a lot of guys on this team that praise Zach. If you think about it over the years, it just kind of
although we haven't really put the players in a position where we've been quizzing them about what do you think of Zach Collaros?
Yeah, a couple times in Montreal when
it's a unique situation with Cody Fajardo because he's replacing him, but we haven't had to. There hasn't been the necessity of going up to Charleston Hughes and saying what do you think of Zach Collaros? Yeah. So you're talking about a pretty limited interview pool when you're asking people what they think of Zach Collaros. I've heard nothing but that he hasn't been an exemplary teammate.
Yeah, I know. I'm not saying he wasn't, but I'm just saying we haven't really dug deep to find out who Zach Collaros is, because last year he wasn't willing to go there at all, and we talked to people that knew him, and they didn't really go there that much. So, but one of the hottest days in the summer, exhibitions on, home game. The buzz is about the Riders. And, there was a buzz. There's always a buzz, but maybe this kind of helps them out a little bit. Do you think maybe they sell a few more tickets tomorrow night?
I'm not sure. I mean, Zach Collaros wasn't going to play anyway.
No.
I mean, this doesn't really change anything. But it gets a bit more talk out there. But I'm not sure this is if they were infusing a new player into the lineup, that might influence.
So there's no
the
addition
ticket
by subtraction, I guess.
I don't think so. I think this game is intriguing on its own merits.
Yeah.
Because it's like you said, it's another report card. You don't want to go too far in diminishing or discounting what the Riders did against BC back to back.
Yeah.
But the fact remains that the teams that they have defeated, the Riders have defeated for their 3 victories, have a combined 1 victory. And the 1 victory was those 2 teams playing each other. And even that ended
should have been
on a mistake, right?
Yeah.
So this is a chance for the Rough Riders to really, really prove themselves. And now that there's been the formal anointing of Cody Fajardo as the guy, this is his first start as a Rough Rider with him being the unrivaled number 1 quarterback. So that makes it more interesting. He's not news. I don't think there was any chance of him being a caretaker at that position, but now that discussion is completely gone. This is the guy. How is he going to do now that he has the reins without the specter of the Zach Collaros situation?
I found it interesting.
Part of the equation.
I asked Jeremy, is this Cody's team? And Jeremy, when they signed for Collaros, Jeremy left no stone unturned. He was their quarterback.
Yeah.
There's none of that fake stuff that went on in 18 between. So I asked him, is Cody the guy? And he kind of says, no, there's not. The same thing as Craig did. There's no one guy above the team and that kind of stuff. Didn't go as far as to anoint him the starting quarterback.
Yeah, but that's football.
I know,
speak.
that's football. But it was just people will be watching the scrum and they'll be listening going, that's an interesting response. And it really is. It's just, we know he's the guy. He is the guy. He knows he's the guy. His wife sent him a bunch of heart-filled emojis. She heard before he did because they're all in team meetings this morning when the trade actually went down. So she saw these heart-filled emojis from his wife, which is kind of cute.
I didn't get anything from my wife today.
Well, you wouldn't trade it. I don't know who you'd trade you for.
Oh, she'd trade me for a Scottish Terrier in about 2 seconds.
That's
The
true.
only debate would be, is it a male or a female Scottish Terrier? I'd be gone.
Really?
So
you'd be
Marion, you and Marion.
That gave me pause for thought because that sounds like a doggone good idea to have rid of Rob.
I can leave right now and you can do a soliloquy if you want.
Sure, I can talk about all the reasons why Rob should leave.
Why would I just don't understand. Toronto has got to be so desperate.
Oh, unbelievable. It could have been. No,
I just hope he doesn't get hurt there. Just don't let this be another Zach Collaros injury.
And I thought it could
That'd
be
so
worse.
awful.
I'm jumping. I thought it could be worse, and it's not realistic. Could have gone to the BC Lions.
Yeah.
Mike Riley is the toughest guy in the league 5 or 6 times over, and he's getting pounded. So maybe Zach's going to have to. There's a bright side to this, a little brighter side. He has a home in the Toronto area. His wife's from the Toronto area. He started his career in the Toronto area. So in a sense, maybe it's a win-win-win for everyone. Like the Argos Riders get a 4th round that could play his way up to a 2nd rounder, which is nothing. Cody Fajardo,
2nd rounder would be significant.
4th rounder.
Ray Algard was a 2nd rounder. Glenn Studer was a 2nd rounder.
And so was Darius Bladek.
Bladek.
So the Riders have Cody Fajardo gets a chance to start, be the guy without any sort of other, but he's the backup. The Argos get a quarterback, kind of, and the Riders get a 4th round pick. So maybe everyone wins. Everybody wins. It's just like a midway day. Everybody wins.
So what are the ramifications financially? As I understand it,
think of this.
I reported back in February that the Riders had paid, the deal would be worth about $300,000 plus incentives. $170,000 of that was a bonus. Wow. So the Riders don't get a lot of cap savings here because he'd received a considerable portion of his remuneration up front.
Well, Jeremy O'Day, that it was structured in a way that they were protected on the cap. I wish I could remember all the details. It was pretty, I think people can realize it was pretty chaotic down there and a lot of scrumming going on. But he says they're protected under this cap with him. And going forward with Cody, his contract is structured in such a manner that if he starts, he will get some incentives. He'll get his money. They're not. We didn't ask about the extension because he said he had a 1-year contract, and that's what we assume. So, is there going to be a huge cap saving? I think Jeremy said the only thing is he's the only one who knows about the caps. He knows where they were when they got him, and knows where they are now, and he's not going to share that information.
Well, most of that money's been paid. More than half of his salary's been paid.
So
from this point on, there's the.
But it happens with any guy. Any guy gets injured, they're going to lose some money, but it's just.
But they paid $100. They paid a big bonus to a guy who didn't end up playing for them for more than 3 plays.
But they took a big gamble on a guy who hasn't played for them, and so You know, you look back to when we remember when that we said anybody but Collaros, and as the big three dropped off one by one.
Although Jonathan, I mean, they could have signed Jonathan Jennings, but from what we've seen on Ottawa, the options were pretty.
Even James Franklin. Remember when we used to, how much time did we waste talking about James Franklin?
Yeah.
And we look at him now going, ooh, maybe they're better off with Cody. Cody Fajardo, I hope he plays here for a long, long time, and I hope he establishes himself as the guy and the quarterback, because I
he's
think
got that it factor.
People are going to want to get to know Cody Fajardo. I think religiously, I think he's going to the community. He's going to be a good guy in the community. He's focused right now on his football, but he also understands the big picture. He understands there's more to life than football. His wife lives on the other coast and goes to school at George Washington University, and he's dealing with that stuff. So, you know, let's try to get to know Cody and I guess support him. I guess we got it because there's nothing else we can do.
Well, not our job to support him.
No, not to support him.
But that's from the fans.
Yes, we will write about him, and if he stinks, we'll know, and if he's worthy of praise, we'll praise him.
The interesting thing now, though, is that he signed the same day that around the same time that Zach Collaros signed a new deal with the Rough Riders, Cody Fajardo signed with the Rough Riders, and that was a 1-year contract. So, okay, that becomes interesting because he's clearly the guy. They've said that with this trade today, but do you let him get to free agency next year? What if he stays on this role? Do you want to lock him up and gamble that he's going to be what you've seen so far is what he's going to be, and be able to get him for less now? Or does he bet on himself and say, look, I'm going to play this season out. I might be able to make $500,000 next year if I have a big year, if this continues. How does this work? Because now that the Riders, especially with the Grey Cup here in 2020, they got to make sure they're not starting from scratch at quarterback. Well, and that means that Cody Fajardo, they'd better get him under contract through at least 2020. The way he's playing, what does he do? Does he look at it and say, okay, I'll take a decent salary now, or am I going to bet on myself, enter free agency next year, and that could be a lottery win? Yeah,
that's a good point. I think
that Cody Fajardo contract is huge.
He's the only one knows where that's going to go. So how about we go?
We go. We have some writing to do. Murray's done most of his. He did a great piece on Cody Fajardo and his time at the University of Nevada Wolfpack, and talked to some people who mentored him and encouraged him and opened some doors for him along the way.
And I just did it in the last half hour. Yeah. Been working on it for a while.
Unfortunately, the corrections and revisions will take 3 days.
Yes.
Sorry. No, so that's a tremendous piece of work, and that'll be in Thursday's paper along with coverage of the trade, story on William Powell, and sundry other sporting items in Thursday's best-selling edition.
Do we need to read the notice here?
Oh, go ahead.
I guess so, So if you enjoy the bonus podcast, please leave a review and a 5-star rating. It helps us grow the podcasts. You can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts.
What is Stitcher?
I don't know. I don't even want to know. If you'd like to send us a question, you can email Rob at rvanstone@postmedia.com, and we'll read it on the show. Do you have any questions today?
Yeah, what's a Stitcher?
Okay.
I want to know.
You can follow Rob on Twitter at Rob Vanstone, or myself, Murray, at MurrayLP. Thank you very much.
So there. For Murray McCormick, I'm Rob Vanstone. Thanks for joining us, and we will be back next week with either number 61 or 62. I don't even know what number we're on anymore, but we will do a regularly scheduled podcast early next week. For Murray, I'm Rob. Thanks for producer Mark Melnichuk. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you again soon. Take care.